Hey guys, coming to you live from my little studio here. Got some really cool stuff for you today. Like, are you getting enough oxygen? What is this little thingamajigger? And what does it say about your oxygen levels and why does it matter? And actually, why people actually get a reading for the oximeter and then they don't know the other half of it, what it actually means. Like, are you able to get oxygen to your tissues and your organs? Because that's what really matters. Half of the story is how much oxygen is actually in your blood. And then the second side of the story, which this little device doesn't tell you, is how do you get that oxygen that's in your blood on the hemoglobin actually into your organs and your tissues? But let's back it up a little bit and let me just tell you why oxygen is really important. And you may not know, and then we'll get to this little device, little dinger thing. And I'm going to take my oxygen levels. I wish I could take your oxygen levels. Let me try. And then we'll talk a little bit more about how breathing can actually help you not only increase oxygen level in the blood, but get oxygen to all of your organs and your tissues. Because if you just have oxygen circulating around the blood and you can't actually drive that oxygen into your muscle cells, into your organ cells, into your skin cells, all of those things, then it's not really of use, is it? Okay. So, first, let me just tell you really quickly why oxygen is actually really important. Hey, nice to see you. Welcome. Oxygen is important because oxygen turns your food into energy. And you guys know this, you can't survive very long without breathing oxygen. Couple minutes, right? And then you start to turn blue and then you start to pass out, like I almost did at the ER a couple months ago. And I used my breathing to stop from passing out. That's a whole nother story. Also, oxygen is about building cells, repairing your body. Do you know that we lose 700 billion cells a day? That's how many cells need to be replaced every single day. What's doing that? Well, oxygen is part of the building block of proteins. So that's how you're actually able to build new cells. Without oxygen, no new cells, and pretty soon we'll just disintegrate and die. All right, number three, the third reason we need oxygen, and there's so many more, but I just want to share three with you. The third one is that oxygen actually kills bacteria. So, oxygen is really key to your immune system. You have to have oxygen to support the cells that are fighting viruses and bacteria in your body. So, that's another reason oxygen is really important. So, now let's get to this little thing called an oximeter. It's a pulse oximeter test. And most of you probably seen this symbol, these signs, which is SpO2. Have you ever heard of that? SpO2 levels. Some people's Fitbits measure them. I had a Fitbit that measured my SpO2, and I was like, what's that? Had to do a little more research, right, when I first got it a couple years ago. And SpO2 actually stands for peripheral capillary oxygen saturation. Let me say that again. Peripheral capillary oxygen saturation. Breaking it down for you, the peripheral body is like hands and feet, right? It's away from the center. That's what peripheral means. Capillary are the tiny little veins like that carry the blood they get smaller and smaller and smaller as they branch out. So of course, near the periphery, like your hands and feet, are going to be quite small, and then they branch off into little tiny veins, and that's where the oxygen gets pushed into the tissues and the organs. And so, if we're measuring SpO2 levels, what does that mean? Well, SpO2 basically means how much oxygen is being carried by your hemoglobin versus how many of those little hemoglobin molecules are traveling around with no oxygen. So if you think about your blood vessels as like a freeway, and you've got a bunch of cars on the freeway, what percentage of the cars actually are carrying oxygen passengers? Of course, we want that number to be super high, and normal levels are 95% or higher. So if you have a blood oxygen saturation level below 95, that's not great. And anything below like 88, you got to see your doctor. Something's going on. Now, there's all kinds of diseases and things that we can have where we're actually below 90. So anything really below 90, you definitely don't want that. But remember, that's only the first half of the story. I have the second half of the story, which is just as important as measuring your blood oxygen level, because that's not the whole story. If you have 95% or higher, that doesn't necessarily mean you're healthy, and it doesn't necessarily mean that your tissues and your organs are actually getting the oxygen that the hemoglobin little cars on your freeway are actually carrying, because the passenger is not getting out. The oxygen is not getting out of the car without a very important molecule. So I'm going to tell you about that in just a minute. So stay with me here. All right, so I'm going to measure my oxygen level. I hope it's good because I'm doing this live. Sticking my finger in. Going to take some slow, deep breaths. It's checking it out here. Do. You see it's figuring it out. Oh, look, I'm dead. Nothing's happening. It's happening. It's happening. So while I'm waiting for it to measure, I just want to remind you that SpO2 stands for peripheral capillary oxygen saturation. You want to get a number between, let's say, 95 and 100. You don't want a number below 95. And you also want to test your levels, your pulse level. So this also checks your pulse to make sure that you are still living. Okay, it's taking a little while, so I'm just going to set it to the side while I'm talking to you. So let me remind you that the oxygen level is important, but it's not everything. What's the second piece to this number? The second piece to this number, and I'm going to just give it to you because this is really important, and I'm going to teach you a breathing exercise that's going to help you with the second piece to this. So what's important is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide levels in your body are actually really important, and if not more important than oxygen levels, because okay, so here's my number. It's saying 100%. That's pretty good. Can you see that? So the 100 number is my SpO2. I guess every single or close to every single red blood cell oxygen level hemoglobin is carrying oxygen in my body. That's an awesome number. I'm really happy with that. I've been doing my good breathing, but it's not the whole picture. The whole picture is, that's half of it. That's great. But the whole picture is also how much CO2 is traveling around my body, because that's actually what kicks the oxygen out of the hemoglobin. And really, it's not, your brain is not measuring oxygen levels in your body. And that's not the way that your body gets instigated to breathe more. It's actually CO2 levels that the brain monitors, not oxygen levels. So when the brain is signaling you to take a deep breath, what do we usually do? We gulp in the air. And what do people tell you to do when you're stressed? Take a deep breath. This is not the right thing to do. This is not the right thing to do. You don't want to take a deep breath like that. Why? Because once you gulp in a bunch of air and you exhale it all out, you are releasing more carbon dioxide, more than what is necessary. And carbon dioxide is actually what we need to get the oxygen from the hemoglobin into the cells in the tissue. And why does this matter to you? It matters because we need oxygen for healthy tissue repair. We need it for our immune system. We need it for proper brain function. Ever heard of brain fog, memory loss? Some of those issues are due to not getting enough oxygen to the right places. So these oximeters are really great to measure oxygen levels. They are one piece of the pie. The other half of the pie is being able to track or at least affect the blood chemistry, meaning oxygen and CO2 levels, so that you can actually get that oxygen to the tissues and the organs. So, how does breathing help? And this is something I teach in my course, my 6-week course, which I am launching my second cohort on March 16th. I hope you join us. I'll put a link in the comments below around how to sign up or check out the course. But how you get CO2, more CO2 in the blood, is actually to breathe less. But how do you breathe less and not get anxious? So this is the other piece of this. How do you breathe less and not get anxious? So that takes practice. And there's lots of different breathing techniques and methods to use so that you can actually get the CO2 levels higher. You stop the brain from reacting to elevated CO2 levels, and you actually hack your own physiology, and you're able to get more oxygen and feel more energy, feel more awake, get better sleep, have better mood, have better heart function, better digestion, better functional movement, and so many more things, right? Increases your longevity, right? If you're not getting the oxygen to your cells, then you're going to be aging quicker. Your cells are going to be dying off, and you're not going to be able to replace them quick enough unless you're getting that oxygen to the tissues. So, how do we do that? Again, we want to breathe less, not more. We don't want to suck in a bunch of air and then exhale all the CO2 out. So, feather breathing is really good for that. It takes practice to breathe less because most of us are hyperventilating. If you didn't see that interview that I did with Patrick McEwen on my podcast is called Breathe Better Podcast. And we just hit over 10,000 listens, and we have almost 100 5-star ratings. So I'm super stoked about that. And just wanted to share with you one out of many different kinds of breathing techniques I teach in the course that can help you actually harness the oxygen that's in your body, in your cells, and bring it more to the tissues and the organs. So let's do it. Ready? And if you're just tuning on now, make sure to watch the replay because I just described this whole thing about the oximeter and how this is only part of the story and why oxygen matters, what we need oxygen for, and then how do you actually drive more oxygen into your body. And that can help you age much more slowly, right? Increases your longevity, helps your immune system, helps your digestion, helps your brain and your heart and everything else. So make sure to watch the replay on that. Now we're going to do just a very short breathing exercise. So let's close our eyes. Now, most people would say, take a deep breath. But being that you just watched this whole thing, you know that taking a deep breath doesn't mean sucking in a bunch of air. That's one of the biggest myths because that's going to blow off too much CO2. So let's take a deep breath, but not suck in a bunch of air because that triggers our sympathetic nervous system. And we actually want to go into the parasympathetic nervous system. So it's interesting when people sit and do their breathing practice and actually stimulate their sympathetic nervous system when they really want to be doing the opposite. So here we go, closing your eyes. How can you take a deep breath without sucking in a bunch of air and have it be really nourishing and relaxing? This is how you do it. Take your hand on your belly. A deep breath doesn't mean a lot of air. If we keep taking a ton of air in, we'll actually get lightheaded. We don't want to get lightheaded. We want to be clear-headed. So feel your belly moving when you breathe. Relax your shoulders. When you take a deep breath, your shoulders shouldn't move at all. Your belly and your lower ribs should move. Feel your lower ribs going out, right? Going out when you breathe. Feel how much more relaxing it is when you moderate the amount of air coming in and you work with the mind and you know that you're getting plenty of oxygen. And you're actually getting more oxygen to your cells in your brain and to your heart when you decrease the amount of air you're taking in and use your diaphragm. Notice how peaceful breathing like that is. For some people, their diaphragm is stuck. They're not used to using it, and it's a muscle. So if you don't use it, you'll lose it. Keep relaxing your shoulders and feel the diaphragm moving. Diaphragm moves down on the inhale. That's what pushes the belly out. And the diaphragm moves up on the exhale. It's a muscle. It can stretch. It can strengthen. And in my breathing course, I give you techniques to actually build your diaphragm so that you can breathe better throughout your day and night. And all of that will support every single level of your health and your well-being, your mental clarity, your positive outlook, your high energy, your longevity, your relationships, and your connection with yourself, with your source. So don't forget that breathing helps you connect to your body, make it healthy and strong, but also it helps you stay grounded and connect to your source. All right, you guys, so awesome to see you. Thanks for tuning in. I will put information about my breathing course. You can also check it out on siennasmith.com. Wishing you a beautiful rest of your day. And remember, a deep breath isn't a lot of air. A deep breath is a diaphragmatic breath.